David here with Figboot on Pens, back again with another fountain pen review. Today I have for you something I feel is pretty nice, and that would be a pen from Visconti, which is exclusive to the pleasure of writing, and that would be the Lovers Point. What I'm going to do today is go over the parts and features of this limited edition fountain pen, talk about what I care for and what I don't care for about it. I'll show some measurements, size comparisons, and provide a writing sample. Thanks go out to the good folks at the Pleasure of Writing for providing this pen on loan for review. If you're not familiar with the Pleasure of Writing, besides an online store, it is a physical pen store located in Carmel by the Sea, California, which is about 2 hours south of San Francisco. Google Street View hasn't been updated yet and still shows the store's previous name, which is Bittner, which was in reference to the store's previous owner, Detlef Bittner. A couple of years ago, Detlef sold the store to pursue other adventures, and the store has lived on under new management. Carmel is one of my favorite places to visit. The scenery is spectacular, and the town is very cool. With lots of specialty shops, not too far away from the store is the most amazing cheese shop. The last time I was there was before I had discovered fountain pens, or else I would have certainly stopped by for a visit. I look forward to visiting the shop the next time I'm in the area. The pen arrives in this standard Visconti box, and the lid lifts off, and inside we have a pen. This is the Visconti Lovers Point. The name of the pen is an homage to an actual place, Lovers Point. It's located on the Monterey Peninsula between Monterey and Pebble Beach in a community called Pacific Grove. There is also an amazing monarch butterfly sanctuary in Pacific Grove that I've visited. It's a really cool place. Now, like I said, this pen is named after Lovers Point. That's lovers without a possessive apostrophe S. That's because back in the late 1800s, the area contained a large tent city used for retreats and prayer meetings. The name back then was called Lovers of Jesus Point. And eventually it was shortened to just Lovers Point. It is kind of funny. On the Monterey County Historical Site, their little write-up about this area is not very kind to the gentleman who owned the land at the time, a man by the name of David Jacks. They called him the most hated and feared man of his time and described how he acquired over 7,000 acres of land in the area by dubious means. Whomever wrote the article certainly has no fondness for Mr. Jacks. The pen is made from resin and is very similar in style to Visconti's Opera Master models, but is slightly longer, at least longer than the Opera Master I have in my personal collection. Now, in general, I'm not a huge fan of the cracked ice look in pens, but there's something a bit different about this particular use of that style here. The deep, dark blues and rich, vibrant gold hues really draw their inspiration from a gorgeous sunset over a beautiful ocean vista. I just really like the depth of this material. I also think it has a bit of a koi fish look to it as well. I like the combination of colors. Let's take a look at the top of the cap. On the top, there is the Visconti logo. This pen does utilize Visconti's My Pen system, where this piece here is held in by a strong magnet, and you can trade it out for a gemstone or your initials or things like that. During the size comparisons, I'll show you one of the other Viscontis in my collection where I've traded this out for my initials. This transitions into the traditional Visconti hinged and arched clip. I've always been fond of Visconti's clips. They are unique, and I like the act of utilizing the clip. You don't use this clip like a standard one you find on most other pens. You can't just slip it into a pocket. It just doesn't work. What you need to do is you kind of grip the clip right around here and you simply pinch. And that act of pinching will extend the clip enough for it to easily be used of materials in varying thicknesses. It works very well in thicker leather cases or other cases you might have with thicker material. The cap angles up slightly. Both the cap and the barrel have what Visconti describes as a squared circle design. You could really notice it here on this top-down shot. Rather than a squared circle, I see it more as a square with rounded corners. But essentially, that's the same thing. At the end of the cap, there is ruthenium plated band. All of the trim on this pen is ruthenium plated. The only marking on the band is the Visconti V. There is then a fairly small step down to the barrel, which continually tapers down until you get to the end where there is a piston knob. The knob is engraved with the limited edition number of this pen. This is a limited edition of 30 pens. And on the end of the knob, it comes to a rounded point. The cap twists off with just a quarter of a rotation. This cap utilizes Visconti's hook safe mechanism. This is another aspect of the pen you really need to get used to because you don't cap and uncap the pen like you do on most other pens. For the hook safe mechanism, you don't just twist the cap. When you want to remove the cap, you push down slightly and then twist. And like I mentioned, the cap is removed in only a quarter of a turn, which is nice. Like the clip, using this mechanism might take a bit of getting used to, but once you do, I find both unique aspects of using this pen to be very natural. I really never need to think about it when I use a pen with these features. It really becomes second nature. Once you have navigated the removal of the cap, you are presented with a ruthenium-plated 18-karat gold nib. I have always been fond of the stamping on Visconti nibs. I just think it's a really nice imprint. This nib will be available in either fine, medium, or broad. And here's a look at the plastic feed. The metal section begins with a flare and then angles up fairly steeply. That transitions into the hook-safe threads and an angled step up to the remainder of the barrel. I will say that this section is slicker than I prefer. However, my grip naturally slides down to the end of the section and is really halted by that flare, so it really doesn't affect my grip that much. If you are someone who likes to grip your pens a bit further back on the section, you might find it a little more challenging to maintain your grip. The Lovers Point is plenty long enough to use unposted. I do find it to be very well balanced in the hand. The cap does post. It doesn't post exceptionally deeply, and you really need to line it up correctly in order to get it on there. Once you do get it on there, I do find that it significantly backweights the pen and throws off the balance, so I prefer to use this pen unposted. This is a vacuum filler. Visconti calls this their power filling system. You unscrew the piston, you pull that back, you insert the nib into the bottled ink of your choosing, and then depress, and the ink, when you depress it, will get sucked up into the barrel. This particular model uses a double reservoir system. That's where there is a forward and a rear chamber. When the piston is tightened, the chambers are sealed off from one another. If you should run out of ink in the forward section, you would simply crack the piston, allowing the ink from the barrel to flow to the section. And then you just shut it right back up again. The Visconti Lovers Point is an exclusive offering from the Pleasure of Writing. I will put a link to it in the notes below where you can check this out on their website. The cost for this particular limited edition model is just under $1,200, which is along the same lines as many of their other limited edition pens offered elsewhere by Visconti. I am a big fan of Visconti pens, and I do care for this model. The only thing I'd really change is the section. While I feel aesthetically the metal section looks nicer than if the resin was extended all the way down, the design of the section really helps it from being too egregious of a sin, in my opinion. Thanks again go out to the Pleasure of Writing for providing this pen on loan for review. Now it is time for some measurements, size comparisons, and a writing sample. Here we go with some size comparisons for the Visconti Lovers Point. I wanted to give you another close-up look at that resin. I just really like the depth to it. I just think it looks really sharp. And in regard to some size comparisons, let's put that on its side so you can really see that. I have another Opera Master in my collection, which is this Opera Crystal. Now, I will say that I need to clean this better. This one's a bit of a challenge to clean. I cleaned it the other day, but it still needs some more cleaning. And you can see that this Lover's Point is just slightly larger than that model. Also, here is one of my favorite Viscontis, which is the Blue Ripple. It's slightly larger than that one as well. And then also I mentioned that I would show you a pen that had the My Pen system, which I have here. And you can see here that I've inserted a DP in there. And that's in place of the normal Visconti logo in the back. And this is a Homo sapiens Magma. In regard to some non-Visconti pens, here it is with a Pilot Custom Urushi, and then here it is with a Classic Pens LB5, and then here it is with a Montblanc 149. In regard to some uncapped comparisons, then here it is with that Montblanc 149 and the Classic Pens LB5, which is essentially a Sailor King of Pen. And then here it is with the Visconti Homo sapiens. So here we have the writing sample for the Visconti. And this is the Lovers Point. And this is a medium 18 karat gold nib. And the ink that we're using today is one of my favorite browns, which is Montblanc Toffee Brown. Now, this pen is available in a pen store in Carmel, California. Now, I know that's not caramel. It looks kind of the same, but caramel and Carmel kind of made me think of toffee, which made me think of this ink. That's what the ink looks like. And then this is what it looks like in comparison to the Zeiss-Kreuznach Chestnut Brown, as well as the Faber-Castell Hazelnut Brown. And here we go with the rest of the writing sample. I find this 18 karat gold nib to be very pleasant. It has a little bit of feedback to it. You can get a decent amount of line variation out of here. In regard to ink flow, for a medium nib, I find it to be decent. And in regard to reverse writing, it is a little sharp. I wouldn't say that that's a strength of this pen, but in regard to some fast writing, the feed keeps up just fine. So there is the Visconti Lovers Point. I really think that this is a really neat looking limited edition model. As I mentioned before, it is only going to be 30 units. So if this is something that interests you, I'd strongly recommend checking this out sooner rather than later before they are all gone. Until next time, thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you later.